If you are tired of revenge thrillers, dark crime dramas, and heavy survival stories, this military fantasy comedy brings a completely different flavor. Most new soldiers compete through physical training, grades, discipline, and performance. But in The Legend of Kitchen Soldier, one rookie enters the army and somehow turns military life into a cooking RPG, complete with missions, upgrades, item rewards, and hidden skills. The story begins at Gangnam Outpost. A new private named Kang Seong-jae has just been transferred in. When Sergeant Major Park Jae-young first opens Seong-jae's file, his eyes light up. Finally, headquarters has sent them an elite recruit. On paper, Seong-jae's military training record looks excellent, but the next second, Park sees the psychological evaluation. His smile freezes. The report marks Seong-jae as S level. In the Korean military's mental health classification, that does not mean he is some kind of super soldier. It means he is considered extremely high risk and needs special attention. Park is immediately irritated, not because he personally hates Seong-jae, but because headquarters keeps sending strange problem soldiers to Gangnam Outpost. Seong-jae may be outstanding in basic training, but in person, he looks distracted. His eyes drift, his mind seems to be somewhere else, and he keeps making odd little movements for no clear reason. So Park gives him a smiley face badge. In this unit, the badge is a warning label for soldiers who need extra monitoring. In other words, it tells everyone around him, watch this guy carefully. After that, Seong-jae is brought to the outpost commander, Lieutenant Cho Ye-rin. As Seong-jae reports to Cho, something strange appears in front of his eyes. It looks exactly like a video game status window, showing his personal stats. Seong-jae freezes halfway through his report. Cho follows his gaze but sees nothing. Looking at Seong-jae's blank expression and the smiley badge on his uniform, she immediately understands why Park is worried. Cho gives him a gentle reminder, but the warning underneath is obvious. Then she asks administrative soldier Tak Moon-ik to take him to eat. Meanwhile, inside the dining hall, the soldiers are already bracing themselves. The cook in charge is Yoon Dong-hee. Yoon is tall, strong, and intimidating. When a soldier complains about the food, Yoon casually crushes a steel bowl with one hand, and the complaint dies right there. But no matter how scary Yoon looks, his cooking is even scarier. The mashed potatoes are as sticky as wet cement. The soup tastes like something no one should drink. Every dish seems powerful enough to silence an entire room. For the soldiers, every meal feels like entering a battlefield. Tak Moon-ik warns Seong-jae in advance, but one sip of soup is enough to break the rookie. Seong-jae runs toward the restroom, trips on the way, and suddenly imagines himself drowning inside a giant bowl of tofu cabbage soup, while Yoon laughs from above. When Seong-jae returns to reality, he is crawling on the floor like he is swimming. The soldiers burst into laughter. People always say first impressions matter, and Seong-jae's first impression perfectly confirms the meaning of his smiley badge. But Captain Hwang Sok-ho sees something useful. When Hwang learns that Seong-jae's mother once ran a street food cart, he decides to send Seong-jae to the kitchen as an assistant. Park immediately objects. This is an S-level rookie. Park would be nervous even giving him a rifle, much less a kitchen knife. While Park and Hwang argue, Seong-jae sees another system pop up in front of him. He looks around, confused, trying to find where the screen is coming from. Hwang ignores Park's objections and uses his rank to settle the matter. Seong-jae is ordered to report to the kitchen. Yoon is not impressed. His own food may be terrible, but he still looks down on this S-level rookie. Instead of teaching him anything, he sends Seong-jae to organize the storage room. The storage room is a disaster. Expired ingredients are mixed with fresh supplies. Boxes are stacked everywhere. Labels are unclear, and the whole place looks impossible to handle. Seong-jae stands there in a daze, not knowing where to begin. At the same time, Park is angrily calling headquarters to complain. After he hangs up, a department chief named Lee overhears enough to feel offended. Lee decides Gangnam Outpost needs to be taught a lesson, so he shows up for a surprise inspection. The dining hall gives him plenty to criticize. Grease covers the vents. Rags are thrown around. The refrigerator looks like it has not been properly cleaned in ages. Lee marks problem after problem on his checklist. Then he opens the storage room. Everyone is stunned. The messy room has been transformed. Every ingredient is sorted by category and expiration date. The boxes are neat. The seasonings are lined up perfectly with the labels facing forward. Lee searches for a flaw but cannot find one. Embarrassed and angry, he storms out. What no one knows is that Seong-jae's system activated while he was inside. It gave him sudden strength and unlocked a skill called Chef's Eye. When Seong-jae opened his eyes, every ingredient had a floating data panel showing expiration dates, freshness levels, and the best ways to use it. In only a short time, he finished work that would have taken other soldiers half a day. Then the system announces that his ability has leveled up. As Seong-jae sways strangely while confirming the pop-up, Cho and Yoon stare at him like his condition has gotten even worse. Seong-jae still does not understand how the system works. He nervously presses confirm. Yoon sees the whole thing and becomes even more convinced that the rookie is unstable. The next morning, Yoon tells Seong-jae to scrub the floor while Yoon prepares breakfast. The dish is beef seaweed soup, a common Korean military meal so basic that any cook should be able to make it with his eyes closed. Yoon somehow turns it into a weapon. He uses the wrong soy sauce, reverses the cooking order, and burns the sausages until they look like battlefield wreckage. The soldiers stare at their trays with fear in their eyes. After the first bite, the dining hall goes silent for 3 seconds. Then it turns into an imaginary war zone. Soldiers duck for cover as if they have been hit. In their minds, Yoon is firing burnt sausages like machine gun rounds, while Seong-jae reloads for him. That is how bad Yoon's cooking is. Finally, the soldiers refuse to eat. Yoon is not frightened at all. If no one eats, he can close early. He dumps the mess on Seong-jae and goes out to rest. Then, Commander Baek Chun-ik suddenly decides to make a surprise visit. Captain Hwang hears the news and panics. He immediately contacts Cho and tells her to prepare. Cho runs to the dining hall and finds only Seong-jae cleaning. When she tastes the seaweed soup in the pot, she nearly loses hope. It is so bad that she assumes Seong-jae made it. Just when everyone seems doomed, Seong-jae receives a system delivery mission. The beef seaweed soup recipe he just learned suddenly becomes useful. He asks Cho for permission to make the soup again. Cho has no other choice, so she lets him try. Following the system's instructions, Seong-jae quickly prepares a new pot. When Commander Baek arrives, the food looks and smells completely different. Baek takes a spoonful. His expression changes from surprise to enjoyment. Then, in the next second, he grabs his throat, turns red, and collapses from his chair. For a moment, it looks like Seong-jae's first real dish has sent a commander to the hospital. Baek is rushed away. The soldiers are horrified. Yoon's food may be almost impossible to eat, but at least it never sent anyone out in an ambulance. At the hospital, Baek wakes up and says he saw an angel. Chief Lee and Hwang panic until they realize Baek is talking about the taste of the soup. So why did he collapse? Seong-jae added perilla powder, a secret tip from his father's recipe notes. It makes seaweed soup taste much better, but Baek happens to be allergic to it. Hwang promises to deal with Seong-jae immediately, but Baek tells him not to be too hard on the soldier. Baek sounds serious, but no one can tell whether he truly cares about Seong-jae or simply wants to taste that soup again. Because the commander speaks up, both Yoon and Seong-jae avoid punishment. Then Seong-jae receives another system notification. He can now see favorability and dislike scores over people's heads. Yoon's dislike is already at 40%. The deputy commander's is even worse. Hwang's is around 50%. Luckily, Hwang only gives them a verbal warning and lets them go. But after calming down, Hwang becomes more worried. He decides Seong-jae is too dangerous to keep in the kitchen. That night, Hwang takes Seong-jae to an observation post. By the time Hwang climbs to the top, he is exhausted, while Seong-jae looks perfectly fine. Hwang explains the importance of the position and says Seong-jae should become an observation soldier. The job is quieter. It does not require waking up before dawn, and it has far fewer kitchen problems. Hwang expects Seong-jae to accept happily, but Seong-jae does not want to transfer. He has just begun to understand the power of his system. If he leaves the kitchen now, all those upgrades might become useless. Then the system gives him another mission. The difficulty has clearly increased. But after the seaweed soup incident, Will Yoon ever let him cook again? The next night, after training, Hwang brings several soldiers to the dining hall and asks for ramen. Seong-jae wants to help, but Yoon is too afraid to let him touch anything. While Yoon is distracted, Seong-jae notices that the eggs are spoiled. Yoon refuses to believe freshly bought eggs could be bad, but every egg he cracks proves Seong-jae right. Using chef's eye, Seong-jae finds the one good egg in the pile. When the ramen reaches Hwang, the egg is exactly the soft-centered egg he likes. Hwang praises Yoon. Seong-jae sees Yoon's dislike drop to 20%. That night, Seong-jae calls his mother to let her know he is safe. After a warm conversation, he reluctantly hangs up. The system pops up again, and Seong-jae confirms the next mission. The next morning, Yoon makes breakfast with no energy. He knows Seong-jae is about to be transferred, which means Yoon's chance to rest will disappear. Then, Park smells something wrong with the rice and starts yelling. Yoon says the problem is the rice itself, not his cooking, but Park begins scolding him. Yoon sees the situation getting bad and runs away, with Park chasing after him. That leaves Seong-jae alone in the kitchen. Chef's eye activates again. The system tells him to add white vinegar to remove the bad smell from the rice. It also warns that the bean sprout soup is too salty, so he adds water and chili to balance the flavor. When the soldiers come in, they are all nervous. Park sees squad leader Kim eating cereal and scolds him. Then Park closes his eyes like he is going to his death and takes a sip of soup. The flavor explodes in his mouth. Park is stunned. He loudly says he has never tasted such good soup. The other soldiers think he must be acting, but when they try it, their reactions are the same. Yoon tastes it too and looks at Seong-jae in shock. Yoon's dislike drops to 0 and his affection rises. The system gives Seong-jae a new task: raise Captain Hwang's favorability. While Seong-jae wonders how to do that, Yoon is already trying to keep him in the kitchen. He goes to Cho and reveals that the improved rice and soup were both Seong-jae's work. Everyone is surprised. But Hwang's transfer order is military command. It cannot be changed easily. Yoon returns to the barracks disappointed. Seong-jae decides to win Hwang over with pork cutlet. After a chaotic search for ingredients, Seong-jae and Yoon finally gather what they need. Under the system's guidance, Seong-jae pounds the pork, coats it with egg, covers it in breadcrumbs, and fries it. The first attempt fails because Seong-jae mistakes coarse salt for fine salt, making it too salty. On the second attempt, he corrects every step and produces a golden, crispy pork cutlet full of juice. Yoon and Seong-jae celebrate, convinced this dish will conquer Hwang. But when Seong-jae brings the plate to Hwang, Hwang immediately sees through the plan. He refuses Seong-jae's request. He does not even take a bite. Yoon feels helpless. Cho hears what happened and comes to talk to Seong-jae. She tells him that no matter what role a soldier has, the most important thing is to complete service safely and in good health. Seong-jae explains why he wants to stay in the kitchen. Cho is moved enough to personally ask Hwang to reconsider, but Hwang still holds on to his first impression of Seong-jae. He does not know how talented Seong-jae is yet, so he coldly refuses. Cho tries to comfort Seong-jae by tasting the pork cutlet. At that moment, the system announces that the mission has failed. Seong-jae's dream of becoming a military cook seems to be over, but the pork cutlet that Hwang ignored is about to change everything. That night, squad leader Kim and his soldiers are patrolling near the coast when they find a man soaked from head to toe. The man is brought back to the outpost. It turns out he is a fisherman from the north. He was caught in a storm while out at sea and somehow drifted south. Captain Hwang sees this as a huge opportunity. If he can convince the fisherman to defect, it will be a major achievement. But the fisherman is firm. Park worries that if they push too hard, the situation could become a problem for the whole unit. Hwang still wants to try, and the two men argue. Cho sees their emotions rising and takes responsibility for calming the fisherman. She brings him hot honey tea. The fisherman is freezing, but he puts the cup down and refuses to drink. Then his stomach growls. Hwang immediately catches the opening. A hungry man is easier to persuade. He orders a huge amount of delivery food, hoping to weaken the fisherman's resistance. But the fisherman sees through the trick. He mocks them for trying to welcome a guest with takeout food. To him, there is no sincerity in that. That is when Cho remembers Seong-jae's pork cutlet. When the pork cutlet is served, Park thinks the idea is ridiculous, but the smell hits the room first. The fisherman tries to resist, then finally takes a bite. The taste overwhelms him. In his imagination, he finally achieves his long-awaited rock star dream. He starts singing rock music in the room. Outside the door, squad leader Kim and the others hear him and start calculating how many days of reward leave they might get if this becomes a successful defection case. Soon, the company commander and Commander Beck arrive. A fisherman from the north appearing inside the outpost's security area is no small matter. They need to confirm whether this was really an accident or if there is another motive. When they open the door, they see the fisherman collapsed in the room. For a second, everyone thinks something went wrong. Then the fisherman licks the pork cutlet crumbs from his mouth. This firm, stubborn man has been conquered by one plate of pork cutlet. After the fisherman is sent away, Seong-jae receives high praise from the company commander. Only then do the company commander and Beck learn that Seong-jae is about to be transferred. Beck criticizes Hwang directly. Hwang immediately says Seong-jae can continue working in the kitchen. At that moment, the system pops up again. The good news comes so suddenly that Seong-jae does not even hear what the company commander says to him. Hwang sees Seong-jae zoning out and sighs quietly, convinced the rookie is still strange. But the company commander gives the kitchen team 4 days and 3 nights of leave. The happiest person is Yoon. Since joining the kitchen, he has barely rested. The next day, Yoon gives Seong-jae a kitchen uniform. When Seong-jae puts it on, the system reacts again. While Seong-jae is enjoying the upgrade, Yoon asks him to try making seasoned radish. Seong-jae follows the system but moves clumsily. Yoon watches nervously until he cannot take it anymore and comes over to teach him. With Yoon's direct guidance, Seong-jae quickly grasps the key techniques. Soon, while Yoon works out, Seong-jae helps cook. The system keeps announcing upgrades, and the quality of the dining hall quietly changes. Before, Park had to give speeches just to motivate soldiers to eat. Now, before Park even finishes speaking, the soldiers rush toward the dining hall. One day, Yoon stares at the Wednesday menu in despair. The menu includes braised pollock. In this kitchen, pollock is a nightmare. It smells strong, tastes unpleasant, and no matter how it is cooked, soldiers usually dump the whole plate. Yoon has already accepted defeat before the day even arrives. Then Seong-jae's system gives him a recipe for braised pollock. He confirms without hesitation. While he secretly studies the recipe, Park suddenly bursts in with urgent news. A National Assembly member and the division commander are coming to inspect Gangnam Outpost. The whole outpost begins emergency cleaning. The dining hall is one of the most important stops. Hwang personally checks the dining hall and wants to impress the visitors with special food, but Cho disagrees. If the visitors see a special dish that is not on the original menu, it may look suspicious. She suggests serving the official menu exactly as scheduled. When Park realizes that the official menu includes pollock, he panics. That dish is so hated that soldiers throw it away. He calls headquarters and asks for a special meal to be supplied early. Chief Lee overhears the call. This is the same man who came for the surprise inspection and failed to find fault in the storage room. He has not forgotten Gangnam Outpost. He sees another chance to make trouble. Meanwhile, Seong-jae and Yoon are experimenting with braised chicken pieces. Yoon's version looks awful, but when Seong-jae follows the system and adds chunjang, the flavor becomes surprisingly good. The system then unlocks another recipe, this time for soft tofu stew. But now the system is no longer teaching him for free. Seong-jae still presses confirm. The system consumes 1/3 of his stamina. Wednesday arrives. The dining hall receives the special food from headquarters, but it is still pollock. Chief Lee has clearly interfered. Park loses his temper, but it is too late to change the menu. Cho says they should at least try to make the fish taste better. Yoon says that is impossible. While they argue, Assemblyman Kim and the other leaders arrive at Gangnam Outpost. The officers line up to welcome them. Yoon can only glare at the pollock and complain. Then the system gives Seong-jae the pollock recipe. He confirms without hesitation, spending another third of his stamina. Following the system, Seong-jae dries the fish pieces, coats them in flour, and fries them until they turn golden and appetizing. When he tastes the result, the fish still has a problem. Park warns him that if he cannot remove the smell, his military life is over. With no other choice, Seong-jae searches the storage room for something that can help. When he sees tomato pasta sauce, he remembers his father once saying that tomato sauce is good for removing fishy smells. The system pops up again. This time, Seong-jae hesitates, then accepts. Emergency comes first. Under the doubtful eyes of Chief Lee, Park, and Yoon, Seong-jae pours tomato sauce into the pan. His body body is already extremely weak, but he keeps stirring the pollock carefully. By the time the officials are ready to eat, Seong-jae is swaying on his feet. The division commander sees the pollock and gives the company commander a cold look. The company commander looks at Baek in disbelief. Baek suppresses his anger and asks Hwang what is going on. Hwang is completely shocked. He still does not know Chief Lee blocked the special food. Chief Lee watches Hwang get scolded and quietly enjoys it. Assemblyman Kim approaches the food line. When he sees pollock, he clearly does not want it. Seong-jae introduces the dish according to the system's instructions, explaining its advantages. The assemblyman forces a smile and says it looks good, but as soon as the officials sit down, Seong-jae's system sends warning after warning. He needs to rest immediately. Yoon asks him to get rice. Seong-jae opens the rice steamer and collapses. The system shuts down. In his unconscious state, Seong-jae finds himself in a lush valley. A bird watches him, then leads him to a familiar figure. It is his late father. Seong-jae is overwhelmed with longing and joy. He hugs his father in tears. His father is happy to see that Seong-jae has become a kitchen soldier. He tells him that doing things with sincerity is what gives a person the strength to keep going. Seong-jae says what is truly in his heart. The army is helping him grow. His father is proud, but the moment cannot last. The digital space begins to collapse. Before disappearing, his father holds his hand and gives him one last reminder. Then he tells him to drink a bowl of revival seaweed soup. The system asks whether he wants to reconnect. With his father's encouragement, Seong-jae presses confirm. His father vanishes. Seong-jae wakes with tears in his eyes. The system shows that his stamina has fully recovered, and he now has one extra heart. Because his stamina is full again, he looks completely normal. The military doctor even thinks he may have been pretending to be sick. Cho comes to check on him. Seong-jae explains that he collapsed because he felt too much pressure in front of the senior officers. The explanation sounds believable, but what he really wants to know is how the pollock turned out. Cho tells him what happened. At first, the officials did not dare to touch the fish. Assemblyman Kim had no choice but to take a bite. Then his eyes widened. In his imagination, he had caught a criminal, and that criminal was Tomato Pollock. After capturing it, he suddenly wanted more rice. The assemblyman begins eating rice with incredible enthusiasm. The other officials try the pollock too, and they all react the same way. Everyone starts asking for more rice. Only then do they realize the rice is ordinary military rice. The real reason they want more is that the pollock tastes too good. Yoon discovers Seong-jae collapsed only when he goes to get more rice. By the time Seong-jae is sent to the hospital, the official's eating reaction has gone viral online. Gangram Outpost becomes a hot topic. The division commander is delighted and gives the kitchen team a commendation. Seong-jae is praised again, and the kitchen team's leave is extended to 5 days and 4 nights. During a meeting, Hwang tries to claim some of the credit, but Baek knows Hwang would never have dared to make such a bold decision. Baek assumes it was Cho's idea. Cho gives the credit to Seong-jae. Only Seong-jae knows that Cho's earlier insistence is what gave him the chance to perform. Baek does not know all the details, but he praises Cho for becoming more responsible. Cho uses the moment to suggest changing the ingredient supply channel. If the military wants better meals, the ingredients must improve too. Baek agrees. He also suggests a barbecue dinner to reward the soldiers. For everyone else, a barbecue party is good news. For the kitchen team, it means more work. While Yoon complains, Park gives Seong-jae a rose knife as a reward. The system immediately opens an item slot. Seong-jae is thrilled. Yoon, however, feels jealous and tells him to get back to work. Yoon is already a poor cook, and now his mood is bad too. He burns the barbecue until it turns black. Then Seong-jae receives a system mission. Raise the soldiers' satisfaction with delicious grilled meat. With the system's guidance, he prepares meat that is crispy outside, tender inside, and full of juice. Baek is so overwhelmed by the flavor that in his imagination, he is running barefoot on a beach in a wedding dress. The others react the same way. The system announces that the mission is complete, and Seong-jae's cooking level rises again. Baek praises him highly. Yoon feels so jealous that he can almost explode. One soldier guesses that Seong-jae may eventually be transferred to the officer's dining hall. The system reacts and adds the officer's dining hall to its information panel. Yoon sees Seong-jae spacing out and tries to discourage him, but he is quickly proven wrong. At the officer's dining hall, Baek mentions Seong-jae during a meal with Chief Lee and others. Baek believes Seong-jae has talent. He may still be a rookie, but if he learns from excellent seniors, he could grow even more. Hwang thinks this is good news. If his soldier is talented, Hwang can share the honor, but Cho firmly objects. She admits Seong-jae is capable, but she says they cannot ignore the other soldiers at Gangrim Outpost. The food has only just improved, and removing Seong-jae now would send everyone back to the old misery. Because of Cho's objection, the transfer is temporarily put aside. Seong-jae has no idea Cho offended Baek to protect him. He is busy checking newly delivered ingredients. Chef's eye shows serious problems. Some items are expired, others are underweight or low quality. Seong-jae cannot help speaking up. Yoon tells him to ignore it. It is easier to close one eye and move on. Cho happens to hear the conversation. She finally learns that the supplier has been sending bad ingredients, while the military staff responsible for checking them only lets Yoon do a careless inspection. Cho decides to report the problem. She criticizes Yoon for knowing about it and saying nothing, then encourages Seong-jae. That encouragement becomes Seong-jae's motivation. The spoiled potatoes and rotten onions become practice material for his knife skills. With the rose knife's effect, his skills keep rising. His cutting becomes smoother and cleaner, and he no longer looks like a beginner. The soldiers also begin changing. Now that they eat well, sleep well, and feel better, their training motivation improves. Seong-jae spends each day completing system missions. Yoon watches his movements become more skilled and cannot help feeling jealous. One night, Yoon overhears Park and the soldiers chatting. The soldiers casually say something that insults Yoon more than it hurts him directly. Yoon returns to the kitchen and peels onions while crying. Seong-jae does not understand Yoon's mood. He is happily checking his experience points. When Yoon refuses his help, Seong-jae notices Yoon's affection score dropping. Then Yoon suddenly snaps at Tak Moo-nik. Seong-jae has no idea what caused the change. Tak Moo-nik quietly tells him to cheer Yoon up, or life in the kitchen will become miserable. Then he gives Seong-jae another piece of news. A television reporter is coming to the outpost to interview him. Soon, a beautiful woman runs toward Seong-jae and jumps into his arms. The soldiers are stunned. Who is she? The rookie with a mysterious cooking system has made food so good that even an assemblyman praised it. Because of him, a small unknown outpost has become famous. The reporter, Jung Min-ah, has come to interview him, but the soldiers are not jealous of his fame. They are jealous that he has a pretty childhood friend. Jung Min-ah and Seong-jae grew up together. She asks the older soldiers to take good care of him. The soldiers agree with unusual enthusiasm. Seong-jae is surprised. They are never this friendly normally. Cho becomes curious about their relationship. When Min-ah explains it, the soldiers tease Seong-jae, and he becomes deeply embarrassed. Back in the barracks, Seong-jae tries to clarify his relationship with Min-ah, but when the soldiers ask him to introduce her to them, he suddenly becomes unwilling. While everyone teases him, Yoon storms in angrily. The leave Yoon had been looking forward to has been postponed again. Instead, Seong-jae gets to go home. Feeling guilty, Seong-jae begins a 7-day, 6-night leave. Seong-jae's reunion with his mother is warm, but he quickly notices a problem. His mother's food truck is struggling. He wants to use the system to check her cooking, but only then does he learn that the system has location limits. Outside the military, it does not work. When he tastes his mother's food, he realizes her cooking is not good. His younger sister comes home from school and suggests that their mother make viral videos. Seong-jae does not want to rely on strange internet food trends. He wants to fix the recipe, but without the system, his own attempt at sausage tteokbokki tastes even worse than his mother's. Back at the army base, Seong-jae's leave creates chaos. The soldiers suffer without his food. When a delivery truck arrives near the unit, they rush toward it and buy everything so quickly that even the owner is shocked. Seong-jae does not know the base has fallen into food chaos. He is frustrated that the system becomes useless outside the military. Then the system shows him his current cooking level. He is not even at the beginner stage yet. He still has a long way to go. Since he cannot rely on the system, Seong-jae decides to improve the recipe himself. He finds his late father's notes, filled with cooking experience and small details. Reading them teaches him that ingredients are the key to flavor. He goes to the morning market with his mother and meets his father's old customers. With their help, he buys fresh ingredients. Back home, he follows the recipe carefully. The tteokbokki improves a lot, but something still feels missing. His mother does not know exactly how his father made it either. If she knew, the food truck would not be empty. Then Jung Min-ah visits and asks Seong-jae to go out, but his mind is still on tteokbokki. When he sees a small shop with a long line outside, he joins the line with Min-ah. They wait 2 hours before finally sitting down. The owner's serving style is strict and efficient, almost like the military, which makes Seong-jae feel as if he has returned to the base. When he tastes one piece of rice cake, both he and Min-ah immediately praise it. After the shop closes, the owner sees Seong-jae waiting. Seong-jae directly says he wants to learn the tteokbokki recipe. The owner refuses without hesitation, but Seong-jae does not give up. He says his father passed away, his mother's business is failing, he is a soldier, and he is willing to do any work. The owner cannot resist his sincerity and lets him stay. The first task is cutting a whole basin of onions in 30 minutes. Without the system, Seong-jae is clumsy. He cuts too slowly, burns things, and gets scolded constantly. Min-ah helps by working as a server, which surprises him. When Min-ah learns he still has not gotten the recipe, she feels disappointed, but Seong-jae thinks he has gained something important. Before, the system always told him exactly what to do. Now he is actually learning through his own hands. While Seong-jae works hard for the recipe, Yoon becomes restless in the kitchen. He wants to prove that he can succeed without Seong-jae. He takes out beef bones that were donated to the outpost. Tak Moo-neek is shocked, but he cannot stop Yoon once Yoon becomes determined. The next morning, Park comes to the dining hall and is startled by Yoon's dark circles. When he learns Yoon simmered beef bones all night, he gets angry. Before Park can finish scolding him, Yoon interrupts. He followed the recipe Seong-jae left behind, and the recipe specially emphasized one word: sincerity. To make the soup properly, Yoon stayed up all night. Park sees Yoon's pitiful expression and reluctantly takes a sip. To his surprise, the soup is excellent. In his imagination, he breaks through countless enemies and finally rescues his wife. It is a strange fantasy, but the meaning is clear. This is the first edible dish Yoon has made since joining the kitchen. When Yoon hears that, he roars with emotion. For the first time, he has tasted what it feels like to be praised. Meanwhile, Seong-jae still has not learned the recipe. His leave ends the next day. The shop owner pours him a farewell drink, then gives him a package. When Seong-jae opens it at home, he finds dried persimmons inside. At first, he thinks it is a reward for his hard work and eats one with his mother and sister. The moment he bites into it, he tastes something familiar. He finally understands the owner's meaning. He makes the tteokbokki again, this time adding dried persimmon to the sauce. His mother records every step. When the dish is served, the family tastes the flavor they have missed for so long. Seong-jae can return to the unit with peace of mind. His mother later tells him the food truck is now extremely busy. Her life finally has some security, but Seong-jae's own mission continues. When he returns to the base, the system suddenly pops up again. A new mission has arrived. This time, what kind of test will he face? Seong-jae trains hard because he believes he needs stamina to survive the upcoming field exercise. Tak Moo-neek tells him to face reality. Gangram outpost soldiers have already accepted being weak in training. They have been lying flat for a long time. When Seong-jae cooks for the first time after returning, he uses the muscle memory he developed at the tteokbokki shop. The system announces that his frying skill and level have increased. He cannot help celebrating. Yoon sees him and feels uncomfortable. Seong-jae already took his leave, and now he comes back acting proud. Yoon tells him to keep a low profile. But when Yoon tastes Seong-jae's fried rice cake, the texture is so good that staying low profile becomes impossible. The next day, Park brings in an old field kitchen vehicle. Yoon complains that the thing is old and broken. Park warns both Yoon and Seong-jae loudly about how serious the exercise is. Seong-jae hears the warning and panics. He is a new soldier and has never joined a field exercise. Under Park's pressure, he treats the exercise as a life or death mission. Yoon tells him not to be nervous, but Seong-jae remembers only one thing: live and die with the field kitchen vehicle. Yoon sees his tragic expression and is speechless. Seong-jae thinks outdoor cooking should be similar to indoor cooking, but the first step defeats him. He cannot start the fire for a long time. When he finally does, he cannot raise the heat properly. The system gives him a warning. His meal rating drops instead of rising. The soldiers look at the food and lose all energy. Hwang is furious. The meal tastes bad, and Baek and many soldiers get stomach problems after eating it. Hwang angrily writes another mark against Yoon and Seong-jae in his notebook. Now the soldiers have no fighting spirit at all. Then the enemy attacks. One soldier after another is hit and exits the exercise in confusion. Hwang also loses control. The unit really reflects its commander. At Cho's reminder, Gangnam Outpost retreats in disorder. When night falls, Hwang orders everyone to stop moving. Seong-jae's system appears and tells him that he must solve the soldiers' hunger problem to raise morale. As he prepares to cook, he sees a civilian worker collecting waste enter through the sentry line. He asks Yoon about it. Yoon says it is normal, but the system warns Seong-jae that the man's morale is rising. Seong-jae immediately steps forward and tells the man to raise his hands. Cho happens to pass by and orders Yoon to search him. They find a small bomb. The system pops up again, but the battle situation continues to worsen. Baek is killed during the exercise while going to the restroom. The unit's losses reach 70%. Even worse, the supply vehicle is intercepted by the enemy. Now Seong-jae and Yoon have nothing to cook with. The soldiers can only rely on field rations. Hwang still complains at the kitchen team, but Yoon and Seong-jae look at him as if asking whether they look like miracle workers. Seeing the soldiers' morale collapse, Cho asks Seong-jae if there is any way to improve the food. The system appears again. After reading the prompt, Seong-jae asks Cho for permission to search for the supply vehicle. Cho thinks it is a good idea. With Park leading them, Cho, Seong-jae, and Yoon find the supply vehicle. Park and Yoon go out to draw the enemy's attention, while Cho and Seong-jae secretly eliminate the enemies one by one. Using a diversion, they recover some supplies, but instead of being praised, they are criticized for acting without permission. Baek, who has now returned to life within the exercise, orders Cho to write a report afterward. Cho takes responsibility for everything. Among the recovered supplies, Seong-jae sees a seasoning powder he does not recognize. The system gives him a prompt. He and Yoon use the seasoning powder to make a delicious mixed rice, then shape it into rice balls for the soldiers. Unfortunately, Yoon's rice balls look terrible. Squad leader Kim, who has also returned to life in the exercise, refuses to eat them. He encourages the other soldiers to steal snacks at night, then throws his rice ball away. The rice ball rolls all the way to the enemy's side. An enemy soldier casually picks it up and puts it in his pocket. This enemy team is preparing a surprise attack. They are already close to Gangnam Outpost, but no one on the outpost side knows. Hwang looks at the rice balls and cannot bring himself to eat. Seong-jae sees morale continuing to fall. If this keeps going, his system mission will fail. Then he remembers that soldiers like fried food. Using the ingredients they have, he makes fried rice balls and sprinkles sugar over them. The system reacts again. When the fried rice balls are served, Hwang is still afraid because he remembers the earlier ugly rice balls. But he is too hungry to resist. After hesitating, he takes a bite. His taste buds seem to dance. The flavor is addictive in a way he has never experienced. Hwang goes outside and gives a morale-boosting speech. With delicious food supporting them, the soldiers' morale rises rapidly. Seong-jae watches in delight. That night, squad leader Kim leads his men out to steal snacks, but they find nothing and are caught by Seong-jae. Kim tries to intimidate him. When Seong-jae refuses to back down, Kim drags him to a remote spot to teach him a lesson. Seong-jae is so nervous that he accidentally triggers Chef's Eye. The system detects Yoon's rice ball moving underground. Seong-jae immediately realizes there is someone beneath them. Ignoring Kim's threats, he runs to report it to Cho. By now, Cho has developed a strange but real trust in Seong-jae. She leads a small team to search the suspicious area and soon discovers a tunnel. The team enters the tunnel. With Seong-jae's guidance, they find the enemy's hidden position. The system pops up again. At Cho's signal, the enemy surprise team is wiped out in the smoke. Gangnam Outpost explodes with excitement. For the first time, they have won a clean and impressive victory. Hwang and Park hug each other in celebration. But as Cho gathers the unit, she realizes Seong-jae is missing. Seong-jae has been separated from the main group. While wandering alone, he accidentally overhears Chief Lee having a suspicious conversation. Startled, Seong-jae knocks over a nearby box. He panics and runs. Will Chief Lee catch him? And who exactly is Chief Lee trying to get rid of?